Hello, my dear students. Today we'll talk about the registration of trade unions. In our previous lecture, we have discussed about the definition part of the trade union and what is the trade dispute that we have already discussed. So today we'll talk about the registration of trade unions. So when we talk about the registration of trade unions, the Trade Union Act 1926 was passed to provide for the registration of trade unions with a view to render lawful association of workers. The Act also defined law relating to registered trade unions and provided certain privileges and protection to the registered trade unions. Means the trade unions, those are registered, will avail certain privileges, and the act will provide some sort of protection to the registered trade unions. This act, the Trade Union Act 1926, also talks about the conditions governing registered trade union and the obligations imposed on a registered trade union. Means if a trade union is registered, then there would be certain obligations on those trade unions, and the rights and liabilities of a registered trade union. The trade unions which are registered will avail certain rights and will be under certain liabilities also. When we talk about the registration of the trade unions, then the Trade Union Act empowers the appropriate government to appoint a person to be the registrar of a trade union for each state. Means Act is empowering the appropriate government to appoint persons to be the registrar of a trade union for each state. And the appropriate government shall specify and define the local limits in which any deputy or additional registrar shall exercise and discharge his powers and functions. So what is the meaning? The appropriate government shall appoint a person to be the registrar of a trade union for the state, and the appropriate government may also appoint as many additional and deputy registrars of trade unions as it thinks fit. If the government feels like we should appoint two additional registrars or three deputy registrars, then government can do so for the purpose of exercising and discharging under the superintendence and directions of the registrar. These deputy registrars and additional registrars would be working under the superintendence and directions of the registrars and would be exercising such powers and functions of the registrars under this act as it may by order specify and define the local limits within which any such additional or deputy registrar shall exercise and discharge the powers and functions so specified. So government will just define the limits where these additional registrars or the deputy registrars would be operating and what powers and functions these additional registrars or the deputy registrars would be exercised. And subject to the provisions of any such order, where an additional or deputy registrar exercises and discharges the powers and functions of a registrar in an area within which the registered office of a trade union is situated, and these additional and deputy registrars shall be deemed to be the registrar in relation to the trade union for the purpose of this act. What is the meaning of this? The meaning is like the deputy registrar or the additional registrars, while they are discharging their duties, their powers, then they would be deemed to be the registrar in relation to the trade union for the purpose of this act. So the appropriate government would appoint the additional or the deputy registrar. They would be discharging the duties and the powers they would be exercising of the registrar under the superintendence of the registrar, right? And for the purpose of the act, they would be treated as a registrar. Now, we talk about the other point related to the registration, that is the while you are going for the registration of a trade union, so definitely while you are going for the registration of a trade union, then you would be in what way you would be going for the registration and how you would be just making an application for the registration of a trade union. So mode of registration we will discuss under section 4 of the Trade Union Act, and then how we can make an application, how we can apply for the registration under section 5 of the Trade Union Act. And the very important point under for the registration of the trade union is the provisions to be contained in the rules of trade unions. What are the provisions to be contained in the rules of trade unions? So a trade union is entitled to the registration only if its executive is constituted in accordance with the provisions of the act. So if you want to go for the registration of a trade union, for the purpose you have to constitute an executive in accordance with the provisions of the act, and its rules provide for the following matters. Means you are going for the registration of a trade union, you have to make it sure that the executive is constituted in accordance with the provisions of the act, and the matters which we are going to discuss now, you have to comply with all those matters. So number one is the name of the trade union. So what is the name of your trade union? You need to highlight that. You should focus on that. Number two is the whole of the objects for which the trade union has been established. What is the object? Why you have formed this trade union, right? So you have to just specify that also, that what is the whole object of your trade union. Then the whole of the purpose for which the general funds of the trade union shall be applicable, and all of which purposes shall be purposes to which such funds are lawfully applicable under this act. Where would you apply those funds? What purpose you would try to serve out of those funds? That you have to specify. And the other important thing is, while you are going for the registration, is the maintenance of a list of members of a trade union. So do you have that list of the trade union members? And adequate facilities for the inspection thereof by the office bearers and the members of the trade unions. You have to ensure that. The other important thing is the admission of ordinary member, who shall be the persons actually engaged or employed in an industry with which the trade union is connected, and also the admission of the number of honorary or temporary members as office bearers required, right? So you have to just consider this point also, which is very important for the registration of a trade union. And the payment of a subscription by the members of the trade union, right? What are the prescribed norms? What should be the subscription that you have to define there, and a payment of a subscription by the members of the trade union you have to specify. And the condition, and definitely this subscription may be the per month, And the other important thing is for the registration of a trade union, which is related to the the rules of the trade union, the payment. I beg your pardon. The conditions under which any member shall be entitled to any benefit assured by the rules, and under which any fine or forfeiture may be imposed on the members. Means you have defined certain rules, whether members will follow those rules, and in case of breach those rules, what would be the penalty, what would be the fine, what would be the forfeiture procedure, that you have to clarify. Other important matter is the manner in which the rule shall be amended, varied, or rescinded. See, for example, you have framed certain rules, and now you want to make some sort of changes in that, or you want to bring some sort of changes, you want to amend those rules. Then what procedure you will follow, or you want to rescind certain rules, in what manner you would rescind those rules, that you have to specify. And the other important thing is the manner in which the members of the executive and the other office bearers of a trade union shall be appointed and removed. Means in what way you would be appointed the executives members for the trade union, in what way you would be appointed the office bearers for the trade union, and in what way you would be removing whether the executive members or the office bearers of the trade union. So you should clarify all those things. And the one more important thing for the registration of a trade union is the safe custody of the funds of the trade union. How would you keep those funds into safe custody, and how you would go for the annual audit, in what manner you will go, right? Definitely the act prescribed that you have to go for the annual audit, and you will not misappropriate the funds of the trade union. So you have to just observe all those things also. And adequate facilities for the inspection of the account books by the office bearers and the members of the trade unions. So the office bearers of the trade union or the other members, they can inspect the account books to ensure that the funds of the trade unions are in safe custody, in safe hands. And the other important thing is that in what manner you will go for the to dissolve the trade unions. So the manner in which the trade union may be dissolved. So all those things, while you are going for the registration of a trade union, you have to just keep in mind all those things which are very important. And the rules framed under the Constitution of Trade Union do not have any statutory force actually. These rules are in the nature of a contract binding the members of unions, in the nature of a contract binding on the members of the unions, and the existence of these rules in compliance with the provisions of the act is condition precedent for the registration. Means you have to frame those rules, then only you will go for the registration, because it's a condition precedent. Without those rules you cannot go for the registration, and are therefore to be framed before the registration of trade union. And any breach of such rules cannot be enforced by a writ of mandamus under Article 226 of the Constitution. And the remedy to the aggrieved is by way of a suit. And for this, I would like to quote one case also here. That was the Trilok Nath Tripathi versus Allahabad Divisional Bench, AIR 1957. That's a very important case with this reference. So these are the certain things while you want to go for the registration of a trade union. So you have to keep in mind all those things. And the other important thing is while you are going for the registration of the trade union, then once you have complied with all the formalities, the mode of registration, you have complied with the application of registration, you have forwarded, then you have observed all those formalities, provisions to be contained in the rules for the trade unions. Then the once the registrar is satisfied, then the registrar will register your trade union, right, and will issue a certificate for the registration in the prescribed form, which shall be conclusive evidence that the trade union has been duly registered under this act. So this is what all about the registration of the trade union. And in the next lecture, we will talk about the mode of registration. And while you are applying for the registration of a trade union, then what are those contents which we have to comply with while you are applying for the registration, or what would be the content of the application while you are applying for the registration of a trade union. So in our next lecture, we will discuss this. And once again, I would like to just summarize what we have covered today. We have discussed about the registration of trade union today. We have talked about that how the registered trade unions will have certain privileges and protections, and what are the obligations. The trade unions would be under certain obligations also, registered trade unions in fact, and the rights and liabilities of a registered trade unions. We have discussed that how appropriate government is empowered to appoint a person as a registrar and can appoint the deputy registrar, additional registrar, and these deputy registrar and the additional registrar will discharge the powers, exercise the powers and discharge the functions of the registrar, and will be deemed as a registrar for the purpose of this act. And once you have complied with all the provisions to be contained in the rules of the trade union, you have applied for the registration that we will discuss in the next lecture, the mode of registration and the application of registration. And once the registrar is satisfied with all those formalities, then will register your trade union as a registered trade union and will issue a certificate which would be a conclusive evidence that the trade union has been duly registered under this act. So this is all for today's lecture. Thank you so much. And I believe this lecture will help you. And in next lecture, we'll take up the mode of registration. Thank you so much, my dear friends. Have a good day. Thank you.